Hi, I'm Dan and welcome to Airbrush Garage. If you're new here, welcome. Returning, thanks for coming back. All right, so today I'm going to be doing a really cool picture of the Milky Way, and it's going to apply a lot of the beginner techniques that you've learned when you first picked up an airbrush, like your dots, your shading, and some freehand texture techniques. I was requested to do this by a really phenomenal soft pastel artist by the name of Elise Galloway, who I met down at the Drew Blair School of Realism. So she decided to pick up an airbrush and give that a try and add that to her already phenomenal artwork. So if you get a chance, go look up Elise Galloway on YouTube and check out her art. You won't be disappointed. So if you're interested in taking some of the beginner techniques that you've already learned and putting them into a picture like this, stick around, check it out. But before you do that, if you like this type of content, please consider subscribing. Hit that bell so you get future notifications. A thumbs up would be great. A couple comments, good or bad. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. We went over 8,000 subscribers since the last video, and I really appreciate it, guys. Don't forget to check out all those Amazon affiliate links down below. That also really helps out the channel and helps me keep bringing you content like this. And with that, let's get started. All right, so I'm going to start off by just getting some flow lines in here. My reference is up above my canvas here. I'm painting on a black canvas that I just got at my local Hobby Lobby. I find this easier than, spraying my background all black first to get started. I mean, you can choose to do that, but I just find it easier just to go buy a black canvas for these type of projects. So like I said, I'm just getting the flow lines going in here, and what I'm doing is keeping the air on constantly, paint down, and really moving the airbrush pretty quickly. I find it's easier to get nice flow lines and stuff like this, moving the airbrush quicker rather than slower. The other thing you're going to see here is I'm going to mist in between the flow lines because the illustration paints that I'm going to be using are basically semi-transparent. They dry to a matte finish, but if you were to try to build up the paints just right on top of the black, take a lot more layers and time to try to build up the intensity rather than just spraying them over the white. So you're going to want to put all of your flow lines, basically sketch it all out in white first. As you can see, if you want certain sections to be brighter, each coat or layer that you put on is going to be more intense. And you'll see that in a second when I start the texturing. So what I'm doing here is I have the paint fully pulled back, and I'm just moving the airbrush in a very erratic way, just a very jerky type of way. And what that's doing is it's starting and stopping the airbrush at certain points where it'll build up like a dot, like if you were going to spray a dot and then moving it along a line. So you're getting more paint where the airbrush is spending a little bit more time than if you were moving it just all in one direction. But you can see it really creates some really cool texture. I basically would do this similar technique if I was freehanding or airbrushing clouds. So I'm just going to continue to follow my flow lines, and I'm going to add in all the texture before we get to the color. And again, you see me looking up. I'm paying close attention to my reference. Now, again, take it for what it's worth. It's a reference. You don't have to follow it exactly, especially with a scene like this. You can take some creative liberties with it. This is a really good starter painting for somebody just getting started with texturing. I mean, you're just going to keep layering, whether it's putting color on and then going back to the white, as you'll see, and putting extra highlights in. And that's the really cool part, because when you put, each layer pushes the other one back and then highlights the layer that you're putting on currently, which really provides for some really cool effects. So you can see I jumped ahead a little bit here, and you can see the really cool texture that it created. As the Milky Way expands out a little farther, as you can see, the textures get a little bit looser. It's a really cool project. You'll really get to apply a lot of your different techniques in here as far as your gradient shading, your textures, your freehand textures, building up layers. You can really see how fogging over one layer, how it really enhances what was underneath that particular layer. So now you see me putting in some color. And now you're going to see the reason why building up the white a little bit on the black background is really going to be favorable for putting the color on top of the white rather than just putting it on the black. As you can see, just putting it on the black, it almost makes the black come out as even more black. Now again, you can build these up on the black, but it would be very difficult. So again, I'm just paying attention to the reference here, and I'm just shading this in. Now when you're shading, you definitely want to leave the paint off when you stop the airbrush. It's not like the texture technique. You just want to be doing a nice gradient shade. I will come in here at this point and do a little bit of detail work with it, where I'm coming in and I'm kind of just really going in between the white highlights. So I'm getting some overspray into the highlight, but it's also accentuating the dark areas. As you can see, it almost makes it look like it's turning black, but it's really not black. So it's accentuating the highlight, but yet adding a little bit of orange over the highlight. Then in between each color, as you see right here, I'm coming back in with the white highlights. And it's really important between each color that you step back from your painting and take a look at it. You don't want to be just sitting here for an hour, 2 hours, just paint, and adding all these colors. In between each color, like after I did the orange, I stepped back and I said, okay, this is where I need some highlights. And I came back in and I started the highlight again. It's amazing what you'll see when you step back from your painting. So now I'm getting a little bit more controlled, a little bit more refined with those highlights. So now I'm going to add in some magenta. So I'm seeing some magenta in my reference. And again, just misting it on, misting it over the white. You're really not going to see it over the black. And I'm just doing some shading. And again, coming back in with the white. So it's going to push some of that magenta back. It's going to add on top of the highlights. The highlight's going to be even a little bit different of a color, of course, because I'm just hitting the white over the magenta. So yes, it's going to be white, but it's going to be a little bit different of a shade of white versus what the other highlights were underneath that I'm not going to hit. So again, the layering effect. You know, when I was first getting started, I really did wish somebody explained that airbrush basically is all about layers. I wanted to see the picture and put the paint in the airbrush and just instantly one layer, just like I was drawing with a pencil, and get the result I was looking for. Once you realize that's not how it's going to happen, and it's really a lot of layers, and you enjoy the process, you'll find that your artwork really will start to pop. And you'll be getting the effects and the results that you're looking for. So I'm coming back in again with the magenta. Keeping some of the highlights that I just put on with the white and pushing some of them back. As you can see too, where I want to bring out some of the darks, I am spraying it over the black because that'll push the white as well back into the background and bring out more of the black. So over the white, it's going to look magenta. Over the black, it's going to push any overspray of the white back into the black and make it appear darker. At no time did I use black on this painting. Here we are with another layer of white. So I stepped back and I looked at it, and I looked at my reference and I realized I needed some blue. So as you can see, I jumped ahead a little bit here, but I sprayed some blue over to magenta and blued it up a little bit. And I have some blue in the airbrush right now. And I'm just going to be adding some blue in amongst that magenta. And as always, a little bit more white. So I'm going to be showing you the speckle technique here. As you can see, I just pulled back on the trigger and it loads up the needle with paint. No air, just pull back on the trigger, get the paint out on the needle, press the air down and flick up. Make sure you have your cap on your color cup. This is one time where I use the cap, because if not, you'll flick paint all over yourself and your gun. As you can see, it really makes a cool speckle technique. Now, if you have a MAC valve, to get a really fine mist, what I do is turn the MAC valve all the way in and then press the air and paint down until I just get some speckles coming out. And this is for very fine speckles. Now, I do also have a speckle technique video on a couple different ways you can do this speckling. One with a popsicle stick and some others. You can go check that video out. I'll pop a link for it up above. And now I'm coming in with some stars, some nice bright stars. This is where you are going to apply your dot technique. There's a couple different techniques you can get to get the star to, shimmer. Here I'm going to use a piece of paper as a template. This is not really my favorite technique to do this, but I'll show it to you just to show you it can be done. You're basically spraying right on the hot spot and let the overspray kind of fill out a little bit of the hot spot, giving you that X pattern. It's going to come in here and freehand that a little bit just to brighten it up. It's a really fine line. So as you can see, I'm pulling the airbrush. I'm starting in close and then I'm pulling the airbrush back. And I'm just going to come in here and freehand a couple really small dagger strokes. Now the next technique I think is the easiest. I think that's the easiest because you don't need anything besides freehand and you can just do it really quick. So again, you start in tight, bring the airbrush back. It's going to give the dot an appearance of a glow. Now this next technique, I think is probably the easiest for everybody, and it does give you the most crisp lines. I just cut out, as you can see, a little cross basically. And that's going to give me my glare or my glimmer. And I'm just going to start that dot in close, bring it out, and that's going to give me my glow. So that's going to give you your sharpest lines. And that's going to be easiest for most people. And it gives you a really good clean effect. So again, so I stepped back and I noticed I wanted some more stars in here. And you can see I did that with the MAC valve. You can see the nice fine spray that I get with that. And then I noticed I wanted to fill in just a little bit more orange in here. So I'm going to come back in with the white. I'm going to mist over where I want that orange more to pop, because again, spraying it over to black just isn't really going to do. Now I'm going to grab my orange. And you'll see how I get good coverage over it. I'm going to fill in where I just put in that white. I think that's about going to wrap it up. Pretty happy with the overall result. I think we're good. And I think we're going to call it done. Well, all right, there you have it. The end result came really good. It was a really cool project to apply all of those beginner techniques and build on some freehand texturing techniques. So I hope you had fun with this project. If you did and you want to see more, you guys know the drill. Subscribe, thumbs up, comments, it all really helps. And again, over 8,000, couldn't be happier. Keep it going for me, guys. I really appreciate it. And with that, we'll see you in the next video.